Commissioner Ryring?
Present.
Commissioner Matoush? Commissioner Zemke?
Present.
Commissioner Lorenz?
Here.
Great, thank you. We have a quorum. Let's go to item B, which is public comment. Any member of the public can make comments on items that are not on the agenda, and I will open up public comments now. I don't see any hands raised, but Melanie, in case I'm missing something, do you see any hands raised, or have you?
I do not.
Okay. So then I will close public comments and let's go to item C, which is the consent calendar. Anyone like to pull off any items on the consent? Then is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I move that we can approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Okay, any last comments? Can I just make a quick comment? I just wanted, there's the report by John Moran, which is the monthly capital projects. And I just want to thank you, John, for that update, especially on the eelgrass mitigation issue. Thank you, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So any other comments? If there are no other comments, then Melanie, if you could do roll call, please.
Commissioner Ryring?
Aye.
Commissioner Zemke?
Aye.
Commissioner Lorenz?
Aye.
Commissioner Chancarelli?
Aye. So that motion carries. And now we're on to the discussion section of our meeting. And that the first item is number 10, which is Pillar Point Harbor West Trail Living Shoreline Project Update and GHD Construction Management and Environmental Monitoring Proposal Consideration. Mr. Moore, and I think this is your item if you want to kick off the discussion.
Yes, this agenda item is for the board to receive a project update and presentation and consider approval of a proposal from GHD regarding the West Trail project, West Trail Shoreline Protection, the Shoreline Project. And the motion is to approve entering into a professional services agreement with District's West Trail Living Shoreline Project Design Engineering Consultant, GHD, for a not to exceed amount of $900,701,463.31 for project construction management and environmental monitoring for a period of 5 years. Since 2012, the district has been working to protect the West Trail shoreline near the bluff runoff outfall culvert. Design engineering consultant GHD was contracted to develop alternatives to prevent further trail erosion with an emphasis on a living shoreline approach with minimal hard armoring. Permitting challenges have successfully been addressed, and the project invitation for bid for actual construction has been solicited. Low bid for construction was approved by the Board of Harbor Commissioners in August. The approved contractor is currently developing a work plan for district approval. Once a work plan is approved, RFIs are answered and building materials can be sourced, a notice to proceed for actual construction will be issued to the contractor. Now that we are entering the construction phase, District Design and Engineering Consultant GHD has submitted the attached proposal for construction management, engineering, environmental compliance, vegetation, signage, and required monitoring and reporting for a period of 5 years. The GHD team will now provide a brief project update and detail on their proposal, then answer any questions the board may have. And we've got Brian Leslie. Melanie, can you allow Brian to share his screen?
And Brad Damitz as well?
Yes, so this is the presentation, right, John?
Yes, yes.
So Brian's going to do this now?
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you wanted questions before the presentation or if we can do the presentation.
Brian and his team, he's got Brad with him as well, and are going to give us a brief update on the project, then kind of go over their proposal components, and then there'll be ample time for answer any questions the board may have.
Great, thank you. And welcome, Brian and Brad.
Thank you. And we have one other person joining as well, Bob Battalio. If you could unmute him as well. He's going to go through a few slides later on.
Yeah, we've got Paul Henderson here as well.
Paul Henderson, of course. Yeah, sorry.
Okay,
GHD.
so there are three of y'all from GHD and Brad. So welcome to our meeting today.
Thank you. So I don't see that I can share screen quite yet.
Mr. Leslie, I've promoted you to panelist.
Perfect. Thank you. I can share screen now. And yeah, if we could just check that Paul Henderson, Bob Ittalio, and it looks like it sounds like Brad's speaking, but if we can make sure those other two are unmuted so they can speak to their respective slides, that'd be great.
Of course.
Thank you.
Just confirming you've got Paul here. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yep, we got you, Paul. All right. I think I need to swap screen, correct? Does that all look right? Paul?
You want to put it on one?
Could you swap the other way? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Looks good.
Great. Thanks, everybody. All right. Good afternoon. My name is Brian Leslie. It looks like the camera is a little bit low. Sorry, let's get dialed in here. My name is Brian Leslie with GHD. As we mentioned, joined with a few of the team members here today. There's a couple others that couldn't make it, being Go Native and Peter Bay. But we want to just give a brief presentation that explains our proposal for construction and post-construction phase services. So everyone knows the project well, so I won't spend too much time here, but the project does two things. It has a living shoreline component that it aims to solve the chronic eroding nature of the West Trail through this kind of multi-benefit technique. And it also proposes to improve the stormwater system, both the aesthetics, function, and maintenance, and also kind of bring an ecological lift by moving this hillside drainage through a new bioretention or biofiltration basin and then to the Pillar Point Marsh. Oops, what happened there? Okay, so our role, sorry, let me flip this over. So our role during construction would be to ensure that the project is being built per specification and that all permits are being adhered to. We also included the planting of native habitats under this contract because it's kind of a unique type of work that we didn't want to necessarily have the contractor do. And also the lead times associated with growing these native plants. Under our existing contract, we've started that process, growing these native plants so that we have the plant palette available to us when we're ready. So we also propose 5 years of post-construction phase services. This work is somewhat unique to living shoreline type projects because you can't just build them and kind of walk away. So the physical and biological performance is something that the regulatory agencies are really kind of interested in. And that's why you kind of see that as part of this project. Also included in post-construction phase services is a periodic maintenance of the dune. And we have subcontractor Go Native to help us with that, to come back to the dune a couple of times a year to make sure that the habitat is looking good, remove it of non-native species, pick up trash, and other kind of miscellaneous services. So to talk about construction phase services, I want to introduce Paul Henderson, who will serve as construction manager for the project. Up to you, Paul.
Thank you, Brian. Hey, so if you want to jump forward one slide. Yeah, just while waiting. So yeah, thanks, Brian. As Brian mentioned, my name's Paul Henderson. I'm a civil engineer with GHD, and I'll be the construction manager for the project. So basically, I'll be the district's representative during construction on the ground and looking out for your interests and making sure the project's built correctly and as intended, and as Brian said, in line with the permits. And so while I'm looking out for your interests, I'm also working with an impartial view, so making sure the contract's administered fairly for both parties, so both for the district as the owner and for the contractor, which is Michael Roberts Construction, as you guys know. So if we can skip forward 2 slides. Okay, I'll carry on while we wait for that slide. So I'll run through our approach, and if you guys have got any questions, I'll be happy to respond to them later. So initially, we've been through the contractor procurement, and as you know, we went through a pre-qualification process. We had 3 contractors invited, and 2 of those contractors provided bids, and the lowest conforming bid was from Michael Roberts Construction, who the district has approved and awarded the contract to. And then, so through our approach, we have construction project management, and we utilize a web-based app called Procore, and that enables us to have real-time records of the project. So, you know, if we have our full-time inspector on site taking notes of what's happening during construction during the day, anyone who we provide access to can jump onto the Procore web app and see what's happening in real time, including photos and all of our daily logs and safety and all that kind of good stuff. And that's really good. An example of how good it is I'm not taking a vacation during this project, but on other projects I've taken vacations and gone home to New Zealand, and I can log on at any time and see the photos of what's happening on the ground. So it's a really good program. And we also use Procore to house all of our specifications and the plans and all of the other project documentation. So everyone has access to it at all times. And so in terms of actually the work occurring on the ground, we will have a full-time inspector, a specialist maritime and coastal construction inspector who's been involved in living shoreline work. So he knows exactly what to look out for and what we need to do and who to coordinate with and when. And, you know, he'll be recording exactly what's happening all day, all of the equipment that's on the ground, what labour is being used by the contractor, what materials have arrived, tracking quantities, making sure all of these things are recorded so that hopefully we never have to look at them ever again, but all those records are there if we need to, and a lot of detail. So Tyler Kasunich is our inspector, and he's super detailed and and as Brian said, we'll be ensuring the construction specifications. So we'll just be making sure the project's constructed per the contract and per the design intent, and making sure that all the requirements of the permits are being hit as the construction's built, and then at the completion of construction. We have
Mr. Henderson, can I interrupt?
Sure.
Are we supposed to be looking at slides right now?
We were, yeah. I mean, this slide it's got some text and a photo of a hard hat, so it's not too detailed.
There we go.
We don't see any slides at all. So whatever you're talking about and you're referring to, we aren't seeing, and we just got that now.
Okay.
We can see them now. Thank you, Mr. Henderson.
Sorry about that. So I am at bullet point number 6 at this time. So with contract administration, that's just basically managing all the documentation for the projects. GHD will take care of all of that. Like I said, it'll be all coordinated within Procore, which is excellent for tracking, you know, the contractor's submittals. We have timeframes that we need to meet for reviewing those submittals and providing approvals for, say, for example, a submission of the schedule for the project. We need to review that, and then we need to send it back, and that's all tracked, making sure that we're all on time so the contractor's not delayed in their work and claiming for lost time. And it's also used for managing the payment application. So I'm not too sure if everyone here knows how that works, but basically the contractor will have a list of their quantities and how many, the quantum that was built in that month, and then we will review it, we'll agree, and then we'll provide a recommendation to the district to pay the contractor. We'll make sure that's all fair, as I said, fair to both parties. So the contract administration also includes a request for information and just dealing with all of the coordinating of documentation and approvals. And then, so also as part of our role as the construction manager, we take on problem solving on the ground. So in a perfect world, everything construction would run smoothly and conditions would be perfect and there'd be no problems, but we will run into unknowns. But like you to be rest assured that we will anticipate these problems, we deal with them early, we don't let these problems lag, and we find solutions to the problems. And so I personally have a fair amount of construction experience, but we also have at GHD and with our other partners in the project, we have significant experience in construction projects in this, in the shoreline environment. So we have no shortage of experts to help out if needed. And then finally, in the construction management, we will have the construction closeout, which, we're making sure that the as-built drawings are accurate and complete. We're making sure that all of the as-built documentation, so all of the records of the RFI submittals, all of our daily logs, all of the photos, just a complete record of the construction. And we'll put that into our final closeout report, which would be, a record of what happened during construction of the West Trail. So that's it from me. I'm very much looking forward to getting out on site and getting this project built for you guys. And yeah, thank you. If you've got any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Now I'll hand over
Mr. Henderson, before you move on, can you review slide 3 for us? It wasn't displayed when you were talking about it.
Thank you, Jim.
This was a slide for Brian. If there's anything specific on there, I could probably answer number 3 and 5.
Yeah, I think I spoke to this briefly.
I was talking about, if possible, the slide before that.
Slide before this, slide 3.
Entitled product stat. Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
The timetable is very important.
Sure. Okay, so we're in the construction phase. We can start potentially as early as this month. A work plan has been submitted to us from MRC, and after we accept that work plan, they are, Paul, correct me here, they have 20 days to mobilize to the site.
Right.
And then that would put them at a finishing construction in the January timeframe, January 2022. And that would commence the monitoring and reporting phase of the project, which we have within our proposal 5 years of the 10-year required monitoring phase. And we actually did have some more slides. So we had Brad and Bob were going to present. So can we, what do you think, Jim? Can we flip to that, or?
Yes, please.
Okay, let's go. Okay, over to you, Brad.
Thanks, Brian. Hello, commissioners. Hello, staff. Just a few quick points on the environmental compliance parts of the project. This is a complicated project, as you're aware, from a permitting perspective. just because of all the different elements. It involves an innovative approach. That's not something that's been done often in California, but something that the agencies are very interested in. It's a project that involves taking sand from one part of the harbor and moving it to another part of the harbor, working in the intertidal. There's a heron rookery, all kinds of sensitive habitat and species. So it's not surprising that there's also a lot of permitting challenges, environmental compliance issues. Generally, these are the main permits that we have. I'm not going to go through all of them, but the main ones are Army Corps of Engineer, Regional Water Quality Control Board, and the Coastal Commission, also coordinating with the county on a lot of aspects of the project as well. And then a number of consultations with the various biological resource agencies, both state and federal. And next slide. So environmental compliance consists of two, for the purpose of this conversation, two elements. One is the compliance during the construction process, which of course is a big deal, and I'll talk about that in a second. But then the other one is the long-term monitoring. And like they say, no good deed goes unpunished. We've got this great nature-based approach, an alternative to a seawall or something that would be, have environmental impacts and not be preferable. Yet, it becomes a real challenge for permitting, and they require long-term monitoring for 10 years, both the biological aspects and then the physical performance by licensed engineers. So it's kind of a big burden, and that's what we're talking through today, all the different steps of this. And the reason that they require all this is because they really do want to learn more about the use of these nature-based approaches. And I think as we go on, it'll be easier and easier to implement, but it's just, at this time, it's requirements. So 10 years for the physical monitoring, and then 5 years minimum for the biological performance. We don't have Peter Bay, who's our botanist, on today. He's out on a site, but he will be doing monitoring of the plants, making sure that the native plants are spreading and the invasives are staying away. And then we have to do annual reports every year to all of the agencies, as well as additional monitoring if there's a certain trigger reached, like an El Nino storm event, then we have to go out there and get measurements after that. And adaptive management is something that could be required. So if the design isn't performing as it's supposed to, there may be modifications to it in the future. And that's just part of this kind of dynamic approach that we're taking. It's not a solid structure. It's more of a, as we say, nature-based approach. Next slide. So during construction, we've got a lot of environmental compliance considerations to deal with. I've got a permit compliance matrix, and it's an interesting look if anybody is interested in seeing kind of what these requirements that are placed on the different agencies on a project like this. We've got 8 pages of permit conditions, ranging from biological stuff to cultural resources, best management practices, mitigation measures, and then we've got another 11-page report called Mitigation Monitoring and Reporting Program, which gets into the details of how you're going to deal with all kinds of different biological issues during construction. So we've got a number of permit reporting requirements that go along with this, and you can see the image of the permit compliance matrix. The ones that are in orange, I believe, are the things where we have to hand in a report for. So there's going to be, in addition to the ongoing reports every year for 10 years, there's a number of different reports that we have to hand off during construction and right after construction. And part of my task will be organizing site visits with the permitting agencies. As I mentioned, everybody's real interested in this project. They want to see how it's built, how it performs, learn a lot more about it. So they've asked that we kind of set up some site visits for the agencies to kind of show them what's going on. And then the other portion of my work is coordination with Paul and the construction monitor on the site. The biological monitor is going to have to be on the site, as well as a construction contractor, kind of making sure all the moving parts are moving, making sure the construction contractor is following all the rules they have to, and all the reporting is being done. On the bottom, I show 2 pictures. These are 2 of the endangered species. One is endangered. It's the San Francisco garter snake, quite a beautiful animal. If you look at the photo, really bright. The other one is a California red-legged frog, which is a threatened species. And then we've got a number of ones in the water as well. And I just brought that up because they require, the biological monitor to be on site during all groundbreaking activities. Just to kind of point out the complexity of the project. And I also want to point out an interesting thing when I did a little research on the San Francisco garter snake. It was funny to see that the main source of food is the California red-legged frog. So I thought that was kind of ironic. I always like to point that out. I think that's it for that slide, Brian. Another element of the project is signage. So the Coastal Commission for a project like this requires two types of signage. One of them is like a prohibitive sign. An example is on the right-hand side where it says, please keep off the dunes. What we're proposing is a small sign similar to that that's consistent with the other signage along Pillar Point Marsh. It's like a little brown rectangular sign like that, and it will be posted on the 4x6 posts. The middle picture shows a signage and access plan. So you can see the red things are the trailways going out, and it will be posts and ropes keeping people off the vegetated dunes. But the green triangle is our first proposed area for the other sign, which would be an interpretive sign, which says, here's what this project is about. We're building a nature-based approach that will allow the animals and the plants to thrive, but it also provides protection for the coast and against erosion and all that stuff. And kind of points out the example that we provided shows a bunch of the different plant species and tells their names. So what we're proposing there is a sign similar to the one on the left. That the visual will be different, but the post will look similar to that. And then probably 4 to 6 of those keep off the dune type signs. And that's also part of this contract as well, working with graphic artists and getting these signs built up. I forget the exact specifications, but it's the highest quality printing, anti-graffiti type of materials to ensure that it'll last for a long time. And the installation of that is part of the contractor's responsibility once they're finished constructing the project. And that's about it for the signage.
Great. Thanks, Brad. Appreciate it. So we get into the native planting side of things. This is Peter Bayes kind of leading this charge with subcontractor Go Native under him, kind of doing the work on the ground. But so Peter will lead the habitat planting both for the dune and the biofiltration basin. He'll direct the contractor about the timing and the specifics of kind of what plants go where type of thing. Overall ecological goal of the system is to establish this resilient dynamic native beach and foredune plant community typical of the region. And the objectives are just in a broad sense. If Peter was here, he could speak to these more eloquently, to make a geomorphically stable, so dynamically stable type of system that can rebound after these extreme wave events or wind events. And also we want to bring biological diversity to the harbor. So the plant palette he picked was intentional to be kind of true to the area, but also kind of bring in some species that are not in the area. And then we also want to kind of have this wildlife lift and potentially create habitat for shorebirds within our project area. So that was it for construction phase services. We'll get into the post-construction phase services now. Post-construction phase, there's those, Brad already alluded to these, the physical and biological monitoring and reporting phases or programs. Key features to these both are to measure the performance of the dune, the stormwater features, and the native habitat that we introduce. These monitoring measures, as Brad alluded to, are project permit specific items. The third item here is the dune maintenance. We have the biannual maintenance of the dune and biofiltration basin by Go Native. So start with an overview of the physical monitoring program. This program is aimed to try to understand the physical changes of the living shoreline, so shape and structure of the living shoreline and the different components that make up the living shoreline, the cobble, the rock, fingers, and the sand. So ESA will be leading the data collection and analysis work as part of this, and I wanted to have Bob Mateo kind of speak to the approach on this data collection. Off to you, Bob.
Thanks, Brian. Hi, commissioners and staff. Bob Battaglio here. I'm with Environmental Science Associates. I'm a senior engineer. And I'm standing in for Lewis White, who's off on vacation. He's our project manager engineer for us. So I'm going to talk about the physical monitoring program. These are the elements. Number one, topography, which is surveying the grades of the trail and the beach. We're interested if there's any erosion or other changes, so we want to capture those. Secondly, regional data gathering. These are publicly available data that we can all get on the internet. We download the data and organize them, and I'll show you an example, but this consists of waves and tides and winds. For this project, the local wind waves as well as the wind-blown sand are important. The third item is photo documentation. So twice a year, we'll be going out and taking pictures of the conditions, and also if there's a big event we want to capture. Number four is the extreme event documentation. That would be, taking pictures and the like. And number five, the data analysis and reporting, and that's just kind of reducing all the data and presenting it in a way that's pertinent to the annual monitoring. Next slide, please. So this is an example of the number one item, the topography. This is from the design phase of the project. The shaded area represents aerial photography that is, and LiDAR. We did both actually on this project, but is used to create a topographic map. It's pretty cool stuff. And then the, well, in the post-construction monitoring, the extent of the drone mapping or the topo mapping will extend farther south to the base of the breakwater where some sand is being sourced for construction. But this is an example. And then the lines show the profiles along which ground surveys are done. I also want to point out that there's a number of benchmarks here where the team has set up already the location and elevation of these points, which are used for construction and monitoring, et cetera. And these are all put together into a digital terrain model from which you can compare to prior and subsequent mapping efforts and get a difference in elevation, difference in volumes, et cetera. Next slide, please. This is an example of data that we'll be gathering off the internet, as I mentioned before. This is from the design phase of this project. And this is kind of a busy slide. I'll just go quickly through it. On the horizontal axis is time. This was 2019 to 2020, I think. I can't really see it. I'm pretty sure those are the dates. But the top panel are waves. The blue and the red are two different wave measurements. One's an actual instrument and the other one is a synthetic. So that's wave height over time. And then the third panel down is wave period, which is an important consideration corresponding to the upper two panels. The third panel down is wave direction. And it's just really interesting. If you look at the blue and then the red and then the yellow, you can see that the wave directions go from northwest to more west to south as you get closer to shore, the blue being offshore, the red being near shore, and the yellow is from a gauge that we had put in the harbor. So this is really useful information. And then the bottom panel are tides. The black squiggly is the tide that you can the recorded tide you can, actually that's projected tide that you can download off the internet. You can also get the observed tides. And the reason for this type of thing is this shows December 2019 when the West Trail was damaged. And if it's kind of in the middle of this, then you can see some big waves in the blue at the top and in the second panel in the yellow, and there's some high water levels, et cetera. So this will help us, in an efficient way, kind of diagnose what's happened and maybe why. Next slide, please. I think this is my last slide. An example of photo documentation. This is not at West Trail. This is at Surfers Point in Ventura, another living shoreline project that we designed. It's been in place for going on 10 years now. And at the top two photographs show a post-storm event. We had a huge swell in Ventura that caused damages. And this is what our design project. You can see on the upper left, the wet sand, which shows where the wave run-up extents were during this event. And then on the upper right, you can see debris that washed up. This helps us kind of understand how high the waves got, essentially. In the lower right panel, the following spring, there was exposed cobble, and then in the fall, the sand had returned, and there was no action needed. Everything was fine. That's the other thing you want to know with these monitoring plans, whether or not you need to do anything or not. So I think that was that my last slide, Brad? I mean, yep. Brian? Sorry.
That was it, Bob.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
I'm around if you have questions. Thank you.
Perfect. So our couple more slides here. The biological monitoring program I'll touch on quickly. It seeks to understand the performance of our created habitats, how well the native habitats establish, how well the system can fend off invasive species, sea rockets, kind of one of our main things, and also the ice plant or Carpobrotus potential to try to move into this created habitat area. Also, how well the system can rebound after these extreme events. It's going to be a seed stock within the dunes. Can that seed stock regenerate on its own, or will it need kind of help from us? We're also qualitatively going to assess how wildlife is using these creative habitat areas, not quantitatively, but qualitatively. So our last service that we kind of touched on it a couple of times was to maintain the dune biannually with subcontractor Go Native, help us remove invasives, trash, and do also other general kind of housekeeping activities while they're out there, led by Peter Bay and also the project team. So I spoke to the construction schedule, so I'll kind of move past that, but potentially this month we get started, and that would put us at a January 2022 stop. Completion of the construction would trigger the start of this 5-year monitoring program. I also want to mention that native planting would happen once these elements are constructed, obviously, but also timing around the rain. So we would need the sediment, the dredge sediments from this other area in the harbor to kind of leach out the salinity, basically. So we need like a good hard rain after we build the dune so that the sediments can leach out. With that, I want to thank you for your time. We're available for questions.
Okay, I'd like to open this up for questions from the commissioner or any comments.
Virginia, I had
Yes.
a question. Is the trail going to be closed to the public during construction?
The trail, can I speak to that?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yes. Okay. The trail might be closed during construction, and Paul, help me here. But there's always going to be access, lateral access around. So there's never going to be a blockage of access to Mavericks Beach.
Oh, you're not closing the parking lot or the trail. There'll still be trail access around the construction for the public.
Trail access around construction. There'll be staging within the parking lot.
Okay.
The West Point Ave parking lot.
I assume that reduces the parking lot capacity then, probably.
Significantly, correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Do we want to, or maybe this is a question to the district, do we want to post some warnings or just informational signage about the construction when it starts so that people don't drive out there? There's not a lot of room out there. It's a small parking lot, so.
Yeah, Bill, we'll be doing that, Commissioner Zemke, just as we have before, like when we resurfaced that parking lot there. Mm-hmm. There is alternative parking lot as you're driving out to the West Trail parking lot. So we'll be looking at other alternatives to direct people to, and we'll get the word out through social media and our distribution lists and postings.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Zemke. Commissioner Lorenas, I think I see you unmuted. I'm not sure if you have any questions or comments.
I do. I'd like to wait just a second. I have a few more notes I want to write.
Okay, no problem. Commissioner Ryrie, do you have any questions or comments?
No questions, but thank you for that presentation. Really well done, as always.
Yes, I agree. Thank you. Thank you. And I'm glad to see that the progress is, happening. And that we're probably going to hopefully open this at the beginning or be done with this project within the first quarter of 2022, it sounds like. Commissioner Lorenas, do you mind if I'm just going to open this up to public comment now if there are any members of the public, and then let me know when you're ready to make your comments. Is that okay?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. So I'd like to open the discussion up to public comments. If there are any members of the public who would like to chime in on the presentation by GHD, please raise your hand. Michelle Dragony. Thank you.
Unfortunately, President Ciancarelli, it looks like the attendee would have to be promoted to panelist in order to talk. And so I just wanted to make sure that's okay, and I'll go ahead and do that. It's due to the version of Zoom being used.
Yes, that's fine. I mean, because then we can let her not be a panelist when she's done with her public comment for 2 minutes, correct?
Okay, perfect. Yes, I believe so.
Thank you.
So Michelle, if you could just let us know, and I'll start the timer, let us know when you're able to talk.
Michelle, are you there?
It looks like we're having technical difficulties, Michelle. It's saying that it's the version of Zoom you're using. If you want to call in on the phone as a caller, we'll look out for that.
Okay, why don't we, it looks like she's going to ask the question in chat. So Michelle, I see you are in chat now. So if you'd like to ask your question now, that'd be great. Or if you I'll keep public comments open for, okay, I see your question. Her question is about the blue heron nesting during the winter.
I can respond to that.
Thank you, Brad.
Thanks, Brad.
Yeah. So there were a number of, we obviously had to have rookery survey and some avian work done before the project. And the permit conditions right now are saying that work conducted after October 1st, outside of the breeding season, nesting season, we don't have to conduct another avian survey. However, there's requirements in the mitigation measurement document that addresses what to happen. I think the assumption is that if there's any herons that arrive during construction, then they're not going to be subject to disturbance because they're already going to be assumed to kind of be used to that noise of construction. But because of the timing of the project, there aren't any major concerns with that rookery. If we had done it before October 1st, there would have been a number of requirements as far as doing surveys and what happens if a bird starts nesting there.
Thank you, Brad.
And Michelle, if you want to send me an email, I can provide more specifics on that and all the measures and everything.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. Commissioner Lorenas, I don't know if you're ready, but I don't see any other hands up right now.
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, please,
okay.
Thanks.
I've got a few things. So first, I'd just like to say I'm really pleased with the work you guys have done, both the ESA and everyone else, GHD and Brad. I was really happy to see you in this project. You've got a lot of history with this area, and you guys all have done a really great job. And, you know, as you know, this project's been highlighted in many places, not just in the local newspapers, but in some of the engineering meetings. And now everyone's going to watch and see what happens when you actually get down and start doing the work. And so my concerns were related to that. And I wanted to say is that I have full confidence in you guys. Nevertheless, I still have some questions. So with that disclaimer, here I go. I went through the agreement, and one aspect of it that I found missing, and maybe you guys can allay my fears a little bit, is public engagement. As you know, Bob, you know just from your travels along that West Trail to go out to Mavericks, that there's not a step you can take without seeing dogs and kids and members of the public most any day of the week, and especially on weekends. And they're all going to be watching what happens there. There's a very strong environmental community here from all aspects. You know, there's people from Audubon who care about the birds, marine mammal folks. This project will be doing some work in the water, so there will be some concerns about what's happening there. I've even had people talk to me worried about what's going to happen to the inverts that are along the trail where the work's going to be done. So there's no lack of scrutiny that's going to happen here. Since I didn't see any plans to engage the public directly, I was wondering if you guys could tell me a little bit about that. And these projects, especially the land restoration that's going to happen along the dunes, they almost always work better if you got some public engagement in there, and maybe even public helping out in some way. And I don't see that in this, and that I just think that that's potentially going to cause some trouble, especially if you look at what has happened on Pillar Point Bluffs, where Go Native has done some work. You know, they did a lot of work there for the Air Force, and the public was a little bit confused about who was doing the work at first, and then it wasn't clear where the native plants were planted versus the trails that were adjacent to it. With dunes, it'll be a little more obvious, but maybe you guys can speak to that. It would be great to, in my opinion, to actually have a meeting with some of the local environmental groups and the public before the project starts, just to engage them a little bit and let them know what is happening. If you look at the list of people that are at this meeting that started at 1 o'clock in the middle of the day, there's hardly anyone that represents those groups because they're all working. So let's start off with that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. I mean, and we're certainly open to that, to having that pre-construction meeting to try to get the word out as best we can. I wanted to speak to like the during construction, kind of personal contacts that happen, if you will, like just somebody just walking up, like what's going on. You know, we just worked on the Cardiff Living Shoreline project, which is another very highly trafficked beach, and there's lots of that, you know, from the naysayer types to this is great, let's do more of these. Tyler, who will be our construction inspector, will be the same person. He was on Cardiff, and he'll be working this project, and he's very good with the public and trying to, you know, just trying to educate and diffuse if need be, or just kind of go up the ladder type of response. But
yeah, just on Tyler, Brian, sorry to cut in, you will not find a more diplomatic and helpful person.
It's really good.
Tyler. He is really good. Really good.
So, and then there's, I like the idea of like community planting events. This is something we're doing on Cardiff that the community really got behind. I'm not sure maybe we can talk offline about how to roll that out in the most, like here, and what kind of group would be interested in doing that. But we've seen students come out or just kind of environmental enthusiasts or activist types within the community come out and help. I mean, we're going to need to maintain this thing. Invasive removal, and there's just those little things that kind of add up. So I think there's definitely opportunity for the community to get engaged.
Brian,
Definitely. Go ahead, Brad.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to chime in too. And Ed, you put me in touch with Kate Dickey from SMCHD School.
Yes.
And she's putting together a curriculum for the whole school. I think it's K through 8 for a marine biology type program. And we had a couple of conversations with our botanist, Peter Bay, as well, because he had some ideas. And she's putting together a curriculum that's going to involve monitoring of these native plants and the seed stocks and stuff. It looks really interesting, as well as some other potential ideas with, I think it's called coastal milk vetch, certain plants that they can actually raise and then plant and monitor over the years. So there is some work, and I would love to see more of that kind of stuff happening as well. Some of the planting is kind of technical, some of the beginning work, but there is certainly a lot of projects. All the ice plant, if that were to be mechanically removed, either during this project or as another effort, with equipment, then a great community project could be for people to come in and remove the seedlings as they emerge over the years. And it's pretty easy to stay on top of that if you mechanically remove the big mats. And then that would allow the seed stock from this to kind of spread throughout the harbor, and then you can start kind of interspersing. So there are, a lot of great opportunities. And one with SMCHD School is just one example, but I think that's a great idea.
That's kind of where I was going, and I think we'll just have to, not at this meeting, but maybe along the way, have some discussions. I can talk to some of you offline about getting the community engaged. And there are a lot of folks here that would be very interested in a somewhat formalized way of doing the restoration, and also as Brian, you stated, helping maintain it, because there's so many people there, and there's kids and dogs and a lot of action, and the only way you're going to keep people engaged in it is with the community helping out. And you have a community, I think, here that will be happy to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in real quick. The Army Corps of Engineers is placing sand up at Ocean Beach right now, and they have a placard or kind of like a storyboard explaining what's going on, as well as having somebody there. And I think that could be helpful, because that person also can I've noticed, told people where they can go and can't go and how to get around, just basic stuff. Like a docent or something. I don't know how we would program that. And then, I do think once the surf gets up, it'll be interesting with the parking impacts. But there's that old parking lot farther down or up the road where we used to park decades ago. So we'll just have to. I'm happy to help if Ed and others, if you want to get together.
Okay. Can I just chime in here for a little bit? Because I'm not totally disagreeing with what Commissioner Lorenas is saying, but I do think that it's important that, the entire board knows what's going on, and like these offline conversations, include the entire board, because there are different subsections of the public that may have different viewpoints, and I think they all should be listened to. All of the viewpoints are worth listening to. So the offline conversations or ex parte conversations, I don't think may necessarily be as helpful for the broad public to understand what's going on. So I don't know, Jim, how we should do this. Because I don't want to delay the project, but I think it's important that ex parte conversations, don't really happen with just a subsection of the public. I mean, Brad, Bob, how have y'all handled these kinds of situations? And that's not saying that, the public input isn't, or the public dialogue isn't important, but I think it's got to be a broad section of the public, and not ex parte conversations don't promote that, in my opinion.
So this is Bob. Hopefully I didn't initiate that concern, but I haven't had any ex parte conversations with anybody, Ed or others, but I was just offering my assistance if I had the direction to do something. I would.
Well, yeah. I do have an answer to that, and I've said this before, that the way to deal with situations like this is to have some kind of committee meeting that meets at a time when the public can actually engage and have these kinds of discussions, and notice it in such a way that any commissioner who has an interest in it can be fully engaged, not just sit there and listen because you got two commissioners as part of a committee meeting. So if you want to be involved in this, that's the way to do it.
Are you suggesting like the public workshops, Commissioner Lorenas, that we've had, or what?
I would say you can call it what you like, and notice it in what's important, I think, is to notice a meeting like this in such a way that everyone can participate, and give it enough time so that the public can and have the meeting at a time when you can maximize the number of folks that can show up. And before you actually have the meeting, make sure that you've communicated to the people that have an interest in this, and that would be by working with folks like Bob, Brad, and myself and other commissioners that can bring the public in.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think you probably have other comments and questions, right?
I do, but I can wait. Anybody else?
I don't see any other hands raised from any commissioners, but if you have any questions or comments, Commissioners Reiering and Zemke, this would be the time to voice them.
I have no further comments.
So the other, not comment so much as just a question and somewhat of a concern, is signage is, you guys probably know, is often a big deal to the public. You know, where you place the signs, what they say, and how they're presented. And even if you don't change anything, I think it would be also useful to have examples and maybe talk to some of the folks, maybe in a meeting like we just discussed, to get some input from the public on the kind of signage and locations. I've worked with the National Marine Sanctuary Collaborative, and we've had lots of discussions on signage with other local agencies, and everybody's got an opinion. And you know, if you work with folks, number one, you'll likely have a result that most people will like, and the other is I know we have a lot of folks in the community that have expertise in this sort of thing, and you'd end up with a better result, I think. So that would be another aspect of just meeting with the public before construction begins.
One comment on the signage is that we have some time on that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I agree with all your points about pre-construction coordination, but as far as developing that interpretive panel, which I know can be an effort in its own,
yeah.
We have till January or beyond to put that in the ground. So I think the lead time is better for that to engage.
Yeah. Also, Ed,
yeah.
Speaking of which, just to put in make a quick point, the Greater Farallon Sanctuary is trying to get funding to redo all those signs. So there will be some movement on that soon. I spoke with the education director about the signage for this to kind of get her input on that, materials, messaging, all that stuff. But I think you're right on with that. It can become, kind of a slippery slope. The sign that I use as an example was from a different living shoreline project, and that was like a $30,000 sign just because of all the meetings and all the stuff. Yeah. Our sign is like a $5,000 dollar sign. I think we definitely get some input but the more, we kind of have to limit that, have something for this project, or kind of rethink the way that we're proposing it. And I'm happy I've done that effort before with the signage and stuff, and it can, everybody has their own version of what works.
Right.
And you can come up with a great sign, or you can come up with something that's completely worthless because you're trying to capture everybody's ideas. But yeah, I'm with you on that.
Yeah, I do understand that. I've been in some of these signage meetings.
Hello. Commissioner Lorenz, did you just get cut off, or can you hear me?
I think he's frozen.
Okay.
I mean,
okay. I don't. Ed, can you hear us?
I'd like to keep moving on this item if we can, President Chain-Crawley.
Please.
Because they're capturing the community input pretty well.
President Chain-Crawley, my internet just went down very briefly as well, and I'm also on the coast, so I think there might have just been a quick little outage if Commissioner Lorenz.
Okay, then let me just, can you hear me? Can you hear us, Commissioner Lorenz? I think I see you moving, so hopefully you're connected again.
I was talking to the ether. Yeah, I'm just saying that having Brad work with the NOAA folks on signage, that'll help, because I've been in those kinds of meetings and it can be a giant project. It doesn't have to be. I think they're trying to coordinate with everyone, because there is a lot of concern about these signs, both from marine mammal folks and so on. So I think that's going to come together without too much trouble anyway. As long as somebody's talking to them would be great.
Yeah, Ed, we have had a lot of, commissioners, we have had a lot of discussion with regard to ensuring that the construction has as little impact on access as is possible. We're trying to keep the footprint in the West Trail parking lot as small as possible, while still enabling the project to move forward quickly, of course, because obviously we all want it to get done and all of the construction to stop as quickly as possible. And then we want a storyboard, like what's been discussed, would probably go a long ways. So we could potentially have a storyboard in place, kind of explaining to everyone that may be coming after construction hours, et cetera, what's going on there, why their parking is being limited, et cetera, in a positive manner, explaining what, how that's going to benefit them in the long run. And then we also have been, along with the, keeping access, we've also been discussing in depth the need to allow the community to continue to be involved, just as we've allowed the community through all the meetings that we've had over the last few years regarding this project, to be involved and listen to their input. That's what's helped us get to where we're at today, with a much better project, with the living shoreline alternative. And ultimately, we'll continue that and be bringing to the board during construction multiple updates on the construction. And we'll be having some update no matter what every single board meeting, which of course any commissioner can pull that maybe consent item, if it wasn't anything significant, to ask more questions about it, or to be able to raise concerns that have been brought to their attention. But in addition, we will be bringing, from the feedback that we gather, on site, or people contacting us, including commissioners, we'll be able to address those concerns in a discussion item as we're progressing. For instance, I would anticipate, as we are putting together, as Brad's working with the whole GHD team and others, to come up with a first alternative for a informative information sign, that will be more permanent on what it looks like and the verbiage and placement. We will be able to bring that, along with other things, to the board for discussion. So the public can weigh in and the board can weigh in based on feedback they've received.
I have one last comment, if I may.
Please.
So thanks for that, John. Like I said, in my disclaimer, I have full confidence in both our staff and the folks that are doing this project. You've worked a lot on it, and it's true, the presentations you guys have done and the public meetings you've done have been most excellent with this. So I have no problems with that. And my comments were mostly directed at just some of the things that weren't in the agreement, and I feel much better having had this discussion with you all. And finally, I think this project to me represents the beginning of some work that we can continue to do at the harbor with respect to shoreline enhancement and public access. It's great that the permitting agencies forced us to do the monitoring, because I think we're going to learn a lot about shoreline protection within the harbor and how to continue this. And so I'm looking forward to bringing more of this type of work to the harbor in the future, specifically further to the west on West Trail, and then also on the, what I guess would be the southeast side of the harbor where Surfers Beach and the RV park is. So thanks, you guys. It's great having you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Commissioner Reiering, I see that your hand is raised.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we approve entering into a professional services agreement with District's West Trail Living Shoreline Project Design Engineering Consulting, GHD, as stated in our packet.
I will second that.
Thank you. Okay, any last commissioner comments? I think we've had a great discussion. If not, let's do a roll call vote, please. Melanie?
Commissioner Zemke?
Aye.
Commissioner Lorenz?
Aye.
Commissioner Chang Crawley?
Aye.
Commissioner Reiering?
Aye.
So that motion carries. Thank you so much for being here, Brian, Brad, and Bob, and Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
everyone.
Thank you,
I
and
appreciate
keep
it.
up the great work. Thank you.
Well, thanks.
So let's
Thank
move
you.
on to item 11, which is authorized increase in temporary staffing services contracts by $350,000 and increase capital expenditure appropriations by $350,000. Julie.
Yes, good afternoon, President Chang Crowley, commissioners. Item 11 is presented to you this afternoon for consideration and supporting the needed additional staffing resources required to ensure the successful implementation of the Enterprise Resource Planning System, or otherwise known as the ERP system. Due to the amount of work required to implement an ERP system, it is necessary to hire temporary employees to support the ongoing operations while our current employees implement the new system. There is an estimated date of completion of the ERP system of May of 2022. And on April 17, 2019, the Harbor Commission approved $300,000 for the hiring of temporary staff. Since that time, the district spent $215,572, leaving a balance of $84,428, which is available to spend on temporary staffing needs to temporarily fill our current future positions. So that's going to stay available for our operating budget. So today we're just talking about the ERP project. and asking the commission to consider approving the spending of $350,000 in the capital expenditure budget. There is a line item in there that estimated temporary staffing and other costs as $400,000. Of that, $350,000 is due to the temporary staffing needs, and there will be another $50,000 available in that line item for any equipment that we might need associated with the implementation of the project. The funding approved with this action should be sufficient to fund the temporary staffing needs for the duration of the ERP implementation. And if some reason we require additional funds, we would return to the Harbor Commission at that time for further approvals. In summary, staff recommends that this commission authorize the general manager to execute service agreements with Robert Half or other such agencies for temporary staffing needs as appropriate for a total not to exceed additional $350,000 and increase capital expenditure appropriations in the same amount to be funded by available working capital balance. If you have any questions or want more information on the ERP system implementation, I would be happy to answer those.
Okay, I'll take commissioner comments and questions for Julie, if there are any. If there aren't, let's take public comment. I see a hand raised. John Olam.
Thank you, President Corrali. I'm just trying to wrap my head around this one. Really wasn't what was on my agenda here today. But is this like money you did not know you were going to have to spend? This $300,000 to implement a software in an office when you only have 6 or 8 people that work in that office that would ever interact with that software seems somewhat astounding. I just can't picture it. What is actually going on? Are we doing a lot of data entry that has to be transferred by hand? The part about needing equipment, I mean, the only equipment you could possibly need would be keyboards and computers. I mean, there's nothing else there. I don't get it. At any rate, maybe staff could expound on was this $300,000 expected to be spent when you first approved this ERP? And what exactly needs to be done to implement an ERP that would pretty much take a big chunk of your staff out of commission? Thank you. Please mute me.
I'd be happy to address some of those questions. In answer to the question if we anticipated this, in the capital budget that was approved by this commission, there was approximately $800,000 in total. $200,000 of that was the cost that was going to be charged for the implementation of the software. And these are ERP systems are very complex when it comes to governmental accounting. We did go through an RFP process, and $200,000 was in range of some of the other software programs that support governmental entities. The $400,000 was an additional line item to help backfill staff. And, you know, we have a fairly small staff to support all of the functions that we do with all the legal requirements that we have, all the reporting requirements that we have. There is going to be 4 staff members assigned to this project, including myself. And at least 3 of those staff members will probably be working on that project full time. We've done our best to try to keep the backfills at a minimum. It will require maybe some overtime by our current staff to keep our current operations running. But at the end of October, our plan is to have all temporary staff trained. We're pulling in some resources from Taylor Point Harbor and Oyster Point Marina to help our operations continue, things like paying all our bills and doing payroll. We have to populate a new ERP system with all of the information that we have in the old one. We're going to be adding lots of functionality. Every single employee in the district will be required to use the system in the end. And one of the big things that's going to happen is that our customers will be able to go online and look at and pay for their bills, which is not currently happening. We haven't had a new system. I think this one was put in 1996. So we have a lot of work to do to get this project up and running. So I hope that answers some of your questions. I don't know if I hit on them all, but I'd be happy to talk to you, John, offline if you want additional information on that.
Thank you, Julie. So are there any other public comments? Okay, I see Commissioner Ryering's hand up. Commissioner Ryering?
Yeah, I'd like to make the motion to authorize the general manager to execute service agreements with Robert Half, account temps office team, as stated in our packet.
Is there a second?
I will second that.
Okay, any further discussion by the commission? Okay, Melanie, roll call, please.
Commissioner Lorenz,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang Crawley,
Aye.
Commissioner Ryring,
Aye.
Commissioner Zemke.
Aye.
So that motion carries. Thank you very much, Julie. And let's move on to item 12, which is the commercial activity permit for California Action Sports. John Moran, please kick off this discussion.
If I may, President Chang Crawley, before John brings this issue back. The board asked or made a motion and it was approved to have a special meeting at Oyster Point to tour and then consider this commercial activity permit. Several attempts over the last several weeks or since that meeting, the last board meeting, were made to try to schedule a special meeting in a reasonable time to be able to act on this permit as required by our ordinances. And just based on everybody's schedule, we weren't able to do that. So what we did as staff is developed a more robust staff report with a lot of pictures and satellite images of Oyster Point to demonstrate kind of a virtual walk around. And hopefully that meets the expectation of the board, and then we can take action on this commercial activity permit as required by our ordinances.
So, Jim, I think that Commissioner Mateusz, I think if I remember correctly, made that motion. And so he is not here today. Have you talked to him and was he satisfied with this virtual, well, I guess somewhat virtual tour of pictures for Oyster Point?
He's aware of the more robust package, but I don't think I can tell the board on what another commissioner is saying outside the board meeting.
Yeah, no, I know. Okay, but he's aware of all of this then, because he made the motion. I just wanted to make sure, because it's in the packet, so I'm assuming he's aware.
And with that, I'd like to turn it over to John.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, commissioners. As general manager has just stated, we We also did have an urgency from the applicant as well. Wants to get this resolved. This will be the third month that the District Board of Harbor Commissioners has considered this commercial activity permit application. And so we want the board today to consider this commercial activity permit application submitted by California Action Sports at Oyster Point Marina. The commercial activity permit applicant is requesting approval to conduct a kiteboarding and water sports instruction business departing from Oyster Point Marina. If approved, the commercial activity permit, pursuant to the terms and conditions of the commercial activity permit, permittee will be allowed to operate a kiteboarding and water sports business departing from Oyster Point Marina. Permittee would pick up passengers at Oyster Point and facilitate water sports activities in surrounding waters outside district boundaries. Prospective permittee has already paid the application fee and would be required to pay a deposit of 3% of gross, or pay deposit and pay 3% of gross sales and services provided. Customers would park in designated spaces as available on a first come, first served basis. The applicant is currently a tenant at Oyster Point Marina and would meet customers at the dock gate and accompany them to the vessel, ensuring social distancing. Applicant would adhere to all county and state guidelines for COVID-19 safety and would include a detailed operations plan consistent with those guidelines. The district already has one water sports commercial activity permit at Oyster Point. In the past, the district has had 2 water sports caps at Oyster Point, both required to pay the district 3% of total gross sales and services provided. Historically, it has been demonstrated that there's not great demand for kiteboard instruction, as evidenced by the reported income to the district. Therefore, it could be argued that having multiple competing caps could make none of them viable. However, this applicant asserts there is, in fact, ample demand for several water sports instruction businesses at Oyster Point Marina and believes that he's got unique capabilities to advertise and make the businesses viable. The board, as the general manager said, previously considered this cap in July and August and asked that we potentially put together a meeting on site. However, time constraints were made that end up having to be postponed for an undetermined amount of time. Therefore, with the applicant's concerns of and sense of urgency, we wanted to get an answer for our applicant as quickly as possible. So we're trying our best today to bring back to the board kind of a virtual site visit and some more information, and we'll be able to answer more questions as well. So I'm going to share my screen now and kind of go over with everybody so the board and the public fully understands kind of where we're at with the site challenges. Can everybody see the screen now?
I can. I think you're fine in terms of screen sharing, John.
Okay. What I've got here is just a bird's eye view of a pretty recent satellite picture of the Oyster Point Marina and the adjacent landside peninsula. As you can see there, for those of you that are familiar with it, the roadway has changed considerably, and Drake Marina is simply no longer there. It's been completely demolished. Are you guys able to see my cursor right now?
Yeah,
I can.
I can.
Okay. This is where Drake Marine used to be, which is was a large boatyard that serviced the vessels. This area here that I'm pointing to where the P is, used to be a parking lot area that was close to the docks 1 through 6 here. The applicant's boat is on dock 2, which is here. Now this whole area is a construction zone. And I'll be able to show you here in a minute where people are forced to park at present. This area here where my cursor is an area where the kiteboard businesses and the current kiteboard commercial activity permittee that's already approved there does all of their kiteboard instruction. And this area here, this little ramp here is the kayak and kiteboard access to the shallow bay area. So this is a little ramp specifically for kiteboard, kayaks, water sports. It's relatively close, as you can see, to the area where most of the instruction, hands-on landside instruction generally took place. However, this area that you're seeing here is no longer a grassy flat area with few trees. It's now, as you see here, a large mound of dirt due to the ongoing construction there. So the area where landside kiteboarding and water sports instruction can take place has been considerably limited due to the ongoing development construction. However, the applicant, who I'm sure is on here today and will be making some comments, is asking the District Board of Harbor Commissioners to consider only allowing him to pick up passengers that will drive in and park in the temporary parking area and walk down and go through the temporary dock ramps all the way to his boat, which is on dock 2. And they will be departing on the boat out of the marina. And then the actual instruction, again, will take place out here in this rather shallow bay area to the south of the Oyster Point Peninsula. So as you can see here, in this picture, it shows where the old parking used to be. There's no longer parking there at all. This new roadway has been put in. This is all a construction zone where they're raising the elevation of all of this to contend with sea level rise. Therefore, a temporary parking area has been created in this area here. And all of the tenants, all of the hundreds of tenants that are in docks 1 through 6 here must park here and walk across temporary walkways down to the docks 5, 6 gangway, and then walk down and across here where there is a temporary float put in place, then walk down across the entryway to docks 3, 4, and walk across another temporary floating dock access to dock 2, and then go to the applicant's vessel where he has a slip with the district. That is approximately 1,100 feet from the temporary parking area through the construction zone, across the temporary access areas to dock 2. Here is the picture of the temporary lot. And here is the picture of the temporary access going down through the construction site down to the temporary floating access docks that go all the way down to the farthest one you can see down there where they could then access Dock 2. So guests would be walking that entire way. Here's a picture of the applicant's vessel on Dock 2 that he purports to use to, unless he plans to get another vessel. This is the one he's currently got with us that he plans to use to load up with all the equipment and take people out into that bay area and launch to do the instruction. This is just a picture of the existing kayak, kiteboard, water sports launch site, which is landside. However, the applicant does not appear to be desiring to access or use this. This is the shallow area where predominantly where the water sports, kiteboarding instruction, etc., takes place. It's kind of a protected bay area. And that's all I've got. I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Thank you, John. Are there any questions from commissioners? I see Commissioner Lorenz, you unmuted yourself. I don't see any hands, but when I look at the unmuted screens, I'm gonna assume that you might want to make a comment. So I don't mean to pick on anyone. Commissioner Lorenz.
I do have a comment.
Okay.
Thanks for the photographic tour, John and Jim. It's helpful to see what's going on down there. I'm still mystified why we had to go to this length to approve this. I see no reason not to allow this person to give it a try. And like I said, the first time this came before us, we'll have an opportunity to deny it if things don't go well, which I expect they should go well. And secondly, I think the tour gives the public, who we don't have very many members of the public watching, but it does give people a view of what's going on down at Oyster Point if they have not had an opportunity to go down there. There's very limited true public access there, and we're bound to lose more once this construction is underway. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Any other commissioner comments or questions? I mean, we do have public comment, but Commissioner Zemke, I'll take your comment or question. I see you're unmuted.
No, I just unmuted myself. I just wanted to say that I was out at Oyster Point yesterday afternoon and did look around, and it is still very much a construction site, but as Commissioner Lorenz said, I really don't see any reason to object to this commercial activities permit. I think it would work okay, and give him an opportunity to see if he can make it a try. Right? So I'm in favor.
Okay, let me just open this up for public comment. I see a hand. John Olam.
Thank you, President Corrali. Yeah, I guess Tom Matoush found something better to do today. He's pretty much the reason the applicant had to jump through these hoops multiple times. For some reason, Commissioner Matoush, really has a problem with this applicant. To his credit, he did say he wanted to build a 40,000 square foot shopping center, smack dab in what little open space is left out there. And but I guess Commissioner Matoush did not want to face the applicant today. Something you should know is I did go look around. There are several kite schools in the Bay Area, but there aren't lots of them, and they all have filled, booked up schedules. Second, the current applicant made it very clear that he had no problem with other competition being out there. He just didn't like the current applicant. So from it's already clear that your current vendor out there views that there's plenty of business for everybody. And last, really, you have no way of judging how much business could be developed out there based on the experience of one person. You can be the best kiteboard surfer or kiteboard trainer in the world, but if you don't know how to market yourself, you're not going to get business. You might be a jerk. I don't know. You just won't get to keep business. Maybe it's just a bad location. I don't know, but you don't know either. So please don't put this guy through any more pain. Let him have his shot at it. It's the American way. Thank you.
Any other public comment on this item? Okay, I'm going to close public comment. Oh, hold on. Oh, no, I see another hand raised. Sorry. For the number ending 6023. Melanie, do you see the raised hand?
He should have the ability to speak now.
Okay.
You might be having.
They've been unmuted, Commissioner Chankrali.
Thank you, Lizzie.
Caller, are you able to speak?
It looks like the caller is on mute. So if you can hear me, you can unmute yourself. Hello. And please make your comment.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Hi, this is Jeff Kaft with Wind Over Water. My intention for joining this discussion are to defend our lesson program that we successfully operated since 2004 and to protect the community from any accident-prone instructors. Johnny Chandler has had an extensive history of accidents, harassment, dangerous behavior, and on and off the water. There have been several instances of Johnny breaking and entering into Dock 12, tampering with my vehicle and equipment. This resulted in official police report that is now potential for restraining order. I believe that he is a liability to not only local water sport and maritime community, but also the marina. I believe there is an ample amount of evidence for the Harbor Board to question Johnny Chandler's character and mental stability in their decision to approve or deny him. Johnny Chandler also advertises that he is a responsible water sport instructor, but there is plenty of evidence to prove otherwise and no history to prove that he has the ability. I would like to propose additional ways that Wind Over Water could help generate revenue by providing a retail opportunity within your marina. Wind Over Water has a history of several successful retail locations, including a water sports store in downtown Burlingame that generated decent monthly sales. If the board would consider helping the existing water sport concession and expansion, then there would be opportunity for more income within the concession department of this harbor. Most importantly, Johnny Chandler poses a safety hazard to the members of the marina as well as any potential water sport clients of his own. Thank you for your time and hard work to support the marina.
Thank you. So I have a quick question for the general manager. So Jim, can you just summarize what our provisions are if there are potential problems with a tenant or lessee? What our remedies are for that?
Any time where the district feels that it's the applicant poses a threat to the safety of the marina, we have the authority in the cap itself to immediately withhold or withdraw it or cancel it. So there's several different provisions within the cap that will address, that do address safety and complying with the law. And if they don't, then we can always terminate the cap immediately.
So
this cap, if approved, would only be it would expire on December 31st, 2021. And of course, we review the history of every applicant on safety and everything else, financial liability, insurance before we renew that cap every year.
So there is this, like a safety net there for the district.
I have to go back and review it specifically, but there are provisions within the cap to address it.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments by commissioners? Okay, so is there well, this is to consider this commercial activity permit. So is there a motion to approve this?
Virginia, I would like to make a motion that the board approve the commercial activities permit submitted by California Action Sports for Oyster Point Marina.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Last call for commissioner comments or questions. I've closed public comment. Okay, roll call, please, Melanie.
Commissioner Chan-Crawley?
Aye.
Commissioner Ryring?
Aye.
Commissioner Zemke?
Aye.
Commissioner Lorenz?
Aye.
That motion carries. Thank you very much. And thank you, John and Jim, for the information, additional information in your report, John. So moving on to item 13, records management and retention policy. Adopt resolution 21-11, approving revised policy 2.1.4 and resolution 21-12, approving destruction of unneeded district records. Julie.
Yes, thank you again. The San Mateo County Harbor District adopted resolution 19-96 on July 17th, 1996, approving the district's record management and retention policy. On October 18th, 2017, the board adopted resolution 17-20, approving an updated and restated version, which is provided on the staff report as attachment 4. Staff reviewed the California Special District Association sample policy, guidelines provided by the Secretary of State pursuant to Government Code Section 12236, Government Code Section 60201, other legal requirements, and worked very closely with District Council to develop the attached recommended revised policy 2.1.4. And I'm going to go ahead and share that policy. Let's see, here we go. This is the Appendix A of the policy, and the purpose of the policy is to provide guidelines to staff regarding the retention or disposal of district records, provide for the identification, maintenance, safeguarding, and disposal of records in the normal course of business, and to ensure compliance with legal and regulatory requirements. Appendix A is the detailed listing of district records that the district would like to protect. They can be in electronic form. And so we're working with Think Connected and trying to come up with, making sure that our electronic records are secure, backed up multiple times, and that only a few people have access to them so that they can't be deleted accidentally. So we've started populating a folder that would contain all of the permanent records on this list. We have a lot of records in our records retention storage unit. We still have a lot of records in our office that we'll continue to go through and review and make sure that we have all permanent records in one location or at least in a location that we can easily access those records when needed. So this Appendix A, for example, will tell us the category, which is basically the department and the section of the Department of Appropriate, the type of record it is, a description or example of what the record is, the record retention period, and the legal authority of how long you have to keep that record. You'll notice on here, if you go down to the board agenda packets, we have them listed as being permanent. For historical reference is something that we continue to go back to and find detailed information about things that we need to understand or see what has happened in the past. You'll see next to that the legal authority as Government Code 60201, but the keeping of board agenda packets isn't required to be permanent. With legal counsel's advice, we've put in district preference next to that legal authority, that the district's preference is to keep those board agenda packets as permanent. The next item is something that I really wanted to point out to you, and that's the recording of the board meetings. We currently keep the tapes and the recordings of these meetings. I don't know how far they go back, but legally we're only required to keep them 30 days, and then we can destroy them after that 30 days. We're recommending that we keep them for 2 years after the meeting. And I want to make sure that the Harbor Commission is on board that any videotapes of the board meetings can be destroyed after 2 years. And if you have a different recommendation, I would certainly, be open to adjusting that. The rest of this information, is very detailed, a lot of information. And I won't go through all of it with you and the public, but if you have any questions, if you looked at it and you have anything that sticks out, then I definitely am open to answering any questions.
We'll open up the floor to commissioner comments. If you have any questions or comments for Julie, please let me know. I don't see any hands raised. I don't see any unmutes. So I'll open this up to public comment because I see a hand up here for John Olam.
Thank you, President Corrali. Perhaps it's not the best place to bring this up, but as a few of you might know, and the 1 or 2 members of the public that are left watching this may know, the Harbor District was subject to a major hack that was discovered on June 25th. And nobody really seems to have any data to indicate, how long they were in the system, when they got there, what was on the system, because they hacked into 2 systems. What were on those systems? Were there any personal information that might be worrisome if bad guys were exploiting it? Should be log files on your firewall that should have been obtained when you first noticed the infection that would show if things were major downloads that occurred. So do you have anything to add to this as to was any files downloaded? What is your vendor basing their opinions on? Because apparently that's all you've gotten so far as opinions. For some reason, the district did not see fit to notice anybody that this had happened. The only reason we know it is because President Corrali likes to see her name in the newspapers, and so she called her friends up over at the Palo Alto Daily and they published, and she was willing to answer questions of Dave Price, anything he wanted to talk about, she was willing to delve into. But none of the commissioners have been afforded that opportunity, nor has the general public. So when you get to item F, please recognize my hand when it is raised. Thank you.
Any commissioner comments?
I have a comment.
Okay, Commissioner Lorenas, please.
And I actually have a question first. Is there a space or cost associated with keeping the recorded digital meetings?
I wouldn't think that there would be a big cost associated with that because, you know, the data is a lot cheaper than it used to be. Data storage is a lot cheaper than it used to be. So it would be minimal.
Okay, thank you. So in my view, I'm not a fan of getting rid of the recorded meetings. Our minutes are lacking a lot of detail in what went on in meetings. Oftentimes it just says so-and-so spoke, not much information is there. And so having the recordings, if we ever need to go back, would be very helpful. And there may be reasons in the future where people would like to know what happened at a particular date. The only way to really find out would be to go back to these recordings. So I don't see a compelling reason to get rid of them. I think they'll be useful in the future.
Any other? Go ahead, Julie, sorry.
Just for clarification, would you recommend that they be permanent records?
Yes, unless there was a compelling reason to destroy them. And I don't see it, since it's not a large cost, or, you know, we're not talking about having boxes of recorded records somewhere. I think it's the value, the potential value is worth it.
Thank you for the clarification, Commissioner.
Yeah.
I also see that Michelle Dragony has put in the chat box that currently video is stored on YouTube for free forever. I don't know if you saw that, Commissioner Lorenas.
Yeah, thank you. I did.
Any other commissioner comments? Let me just make a quick comment about what happened with the situation with the Daily Post, just to set the record straight so that there aren't any misconstruction of the situation. So I did receive a call from the Daily Post because they were actually doing an article on the VTA shooting and I guess some ransomware issues that I was not aware about or aware of. And essentially they saw on our agenda item, I think it was in May or April, I can't remember, we had an agenda item on the ransomware updates that we ended up discussing in closed session for security reasons. And I had just received the email from General Manager Pruitt about how we staved off the ransomware attack, and that is a public record. And so that was the message that I forwarded to the Daily Post at their request. And it was just fortuitous that we had just received, the whole board received that. And I believe Lizzie or somebody, no, not Lizzie, someone was quoted in the paper and it wasn't me. I was just forwarding information based off of our public agenda item. So there was no like proactive seeking of being in the newspaper as erroneously claimed. But that is, I just wanted everyone to know that people are watching, and I thought that the article was actually a tribute or a, you know, a well, not a tribute, a compliment to our staff for doing what we've done and the consultant that we've been working with. So I want to thank the staff and especially Lizzie and Julie for making sure that we're secure. I mean, I think it's in the public's interest, and I think it's in the Harbor District's best interest. So thank you to the staff for making sure that we're doing the best that we can do in this kind of technologically challenging environment. So any other commissioner comments or questions? I see, Michelle, I thought that I saw your hand up, but I'm not sure if you would like to make a comment. If not, I'm just going to close public comment. And I think that is there a motion to approve this revision of the policy?
So moved.
There's two President Jane Crawley, there's two resolutions to be adopted. Is the motion for both resolutions or just one?
No, for both. Sorry, I'm trying to pull it up. I'm trying to pull up the actual resolution on my computer, and it's just taking a little more time. So basically, it's to adopt the retention policy 2111 and approve. Is that right? And approve the revised policy 2.1.4 and 21-12 is approving destruction of unneeded district records. So, Commissioner Wiring, is that what you would like to make a motion for?
Yes, I'm going to read this to make sure. Yes, both. That's correct.
Okay. So basically, you're making a motion to adopt Resolution 21-11, approving revised policy 2.1.4, and Resolution 21-12, approving the destruction of unneeded district records.
Yes, that's correct.
Is there a second?
I will second that.
Okay, any further commissioner discussions? Okay, roll call, please.
Commissioner Reiring?
Aye.
Commissioner Zemke?
Aye.
Commissioner Lorenz?
I'm going to say no for reasons stated, and I guess I'll have to thank you two for storing the records.
Commissioner Chang Crawley?
Aye. So that motion carries. Thank you very much. And thanks, Julie, for your report. So now we're on to item E, which is commissioner comments. Any commissioner may make public comments limited to 2 minutes. I see Commissioner Zemke's mic off. Would you like to make any comments, Commissioner Zemke?
Yes, I can make a comment. I just wanted to really reiterate my thanks to our consultant and to the staff that helped facilitate the public meeting that we had last week on our master plan. I appreciated all of the public comments that we received, and we'll be giving those due consideration. Also, too, I just wanted to express my appreciation to the district for sending me to the CSDA conference 2 weeks ago. I was there with Jim and Julie, and Virginia, I'm sorry that you didn't get to stick around other than the first day. But I found the conference very, very useful. The keynote speakers were entertaining and also very insightful in what they had to say. The breakout sessions were very good and very informative. I was able to look at take a wide variety of breakout sessions all the way from technology and social media, working effectively on general plans, and also limiting liability on roads and streets and trails. So it was very well-rounded, and I found it very useful and very interesting.
Thank you. Commissioner Lorenz, I see that your mic is off too.
It is. Just a couple of things. First of all, I'd like to suggest that we move the meeting time for our regular meeting to the evening hours where more people can attend. If you look at the participant list, we have almost double the number of panelists than we do attendees. It's a statement of how difficult it is for the public to show up. So I would appreciate us taking that up at some point. And secondly, I'd like to suggest that I think I'll just leave it there for now.
Thank you, Commissioner Ryring. You're on mute, Commissioner Ryring. I'm not sure if you have anything to say, but if you do, you're on mute.
Oh, no, I don't.
Okay. Okay, I just have a quick comment. So I want to thank Jim and Commissioner Zemke for attending, and Julie. I didn't see you, Julie, at the CSDA conference, and I'm sorry I had to leave. It was a very last minute request by the Red Cross for me to be deployed to help with sheltering evacuees from the Caldor fire, which that deployment actually lasted for about 8 or 9 days. So I'm sorry that I missed the rest of the conference, but it was not an easy decision, but I felt that at that point in time, the evacuation issue and problems were very challenging around the state. So we were deployed up there. But I'm glad to know that Commissioner Zemke got a lot out of the conference, and Julie got a lot out of it as well. I will say that the one session that I attended with the general manager and Commissioner Zemke was very good, and I hope that we've all learned from it. And it was basically how to work, was to have the board and general managers, kind of work together well, and what things work and what things don't work, and just suggestions and things like that. So I thought that was very useful. So Jim, thanks for suggesting that. And that's all I have right now, which leads us to any other comments. And I see that you're unmuted, so I don't want to skip over you. If you have anything to add. Commissioner Lorenas?
Oh, no, thank you.
Okay, so now we'll go on to item F for future agenda items. Any commissioners for that? I know there's a public comment on that. So why don't I open up to public comment now? John Olin.
Thank you, President Corrali. So back to the hack of data that occurred at the Harbor District, I would suggest that you agendize an item and discuss it. As Virginia made clear in her email to Mr. Price, that she was more than willing to answer any questions that he had. He didn't have very many, and he doesn't have an educated opinion on technical issues, apparently. Neither does her friend, Emily Maibach. So none of you know whether district data, personal data was stolen. None of you know if the bad guys are out there exploiting that right now. Yet none of you, and it has not been mentioned in any meeting. When I first found out about it, I sent in a PRA request and was provided a completely redacted memo that told me nothing. And then when I notified staff that Virginia had been in contact with the newspapers, all of a sudden that redacted memo became unredacted. There's no explanation for that other than they did not want me to know that not one, but 2 servers had been hacked, that your network had been infiltrated. You simply do not know when you were infiltrated. The bad guys make their money in 2 ways. They encrypt your data and they download it and threaten to release it. As I understand it, this was the servers that were in question handled your marina operations, everything. The credit cards, driver's license numbers, birth dates, all kinds of identifying information is stored in that package. Yet none of you has asked and none of you know what happened. I don't quite understand why this is not on your agenda.
Thank you, Mr.
when you can
Olam.
make it 3 times.
Thank you. Any commissioner comments?
I'll make a motion to adjourn if there are no other comments.
Is there a second?
I can second that.
Okay. Roll call, please, Melanie.
Commissioner Zemke,
Aye.
Commissioner Lorenz,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang Corrali,
Aye.
Commissioner Ryder.
Aye.
Thank you for being here. The meeting's adjourned at 3:05.